Welcome to Teams Tuesday, a podcast about mastering the best about what other people have already figured out. Teams Tuesday focuses on insights and lessons that never expire. You will walk away from every episode with actionable insights that help you get better results and be more productive.
This was about as bizarre and easy as it gets.
The client just couldn't make up their mind.
I feel like we had top.
Went from a project of 20 weeks to just 2.
The DevOps was a cultural shift.
This is Teams Tuesday with your host, Peter Ward.
Welcome to Teams Tuesday. My name's Peter Ward. I'm the host, and we've got a great guest, Joy Apple, who's a repeat guest I just had. Welcome to the show, Joy. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. How are you today?
Not too bad, not too bad. Did you do anything on St. Patrick's Day last weekend?
Of course. Celebrated all weekend right up until last night, as is tradition. So It's a double holiday. It's my husband's birthday on St. Patrick's Day. So
that's fantastic. So it's like a keg of Guinness,
minimum. No, there were some Guinnesses. I do have to have at least one Irish whiskey on St. Patrick's Day. You know the routine.
Bottle of Baileys, yes.
Yeah. No green beer, though. I draw the line.
Green beer. Have you tasted the non-alcoholic Guinness?
No. Should I?
Okay. It's actually very good. For non-alcoholic drinks, it's actually pretty good. We actually had a friend who retired from the IT industry, and he opened up a non-alcoholic liquor store in New Jersey. And the athletic beer, non-alcoholic, is good. Okay. The non-alcoholic wine or the rosé, which is basically alcohol, and they've spun it around, so the alcohol was now spun out. Basically tastes like grapefruit juice from CVS. Okay, but they're charging you a premium for this. But the non-alcoholic Guinness is pretty good, actually.
Okay.
It's on par on that.
Okay.
So a little bit about yourself. I understand you've got 2 dogs and a cat, and I see behind you you've got the whole cat. You've got the cat entertaining center. Yes,
I was hoping that would keep him off my desk. He still will occasionally walk across, get right in the middle of things, hit the keyboard, but then he will go lay down over there. So it helps.
Okay. Did you see that AI-enabled cat videos from McDonald's last week?
No.
Oh, I thought that was pretty impressive, actually.
Find it.
Okay. So tell me about your first job. Okay. I know you're not, IT was like your second career move, wasn't it?
It was. I was always a self-taught techie person. I was obsessed with it. My dad was an engineer and would bring home amazing tools, and I just thought it was super cool. But yeah, my first foray into the professional world was in banking. First mortgages, the mortgage industry, then banking in the North Alabama area. Didn't love it. Did not. This may surprise you. In fact, Peter, I don't know if you know this or not. People can get very uptight about both their money and their houses.
I can understand that. There's the most important thing. Is probably the biggest purchase of their life is a house.
Sure.
And money as well on that. Okay.
That's how you get
so
the
let
house.
me get this totally clear. You left banking for the exciting career move of SharePoint and Microsoft. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Absolutely. I was lured away by the glamour of IT. And here I am today.
All right. Okay. The glamour of IT
yes.
on that front. Okay. So you're working at Orchestry, and which is we actually are a reseller of Orchestry. Tell me, what does Orchestry do, and why is that such a great product?
Oh my goodness. Orchestry is governance made easy. I'm going to say the word easy. I don't typically like to say the word easy, but it's automated governance. It makes it actionable. It gives you insightful information and data about your data, and it gives you a way to automate governance in such a way it's actually useful for the humans that then are impacted by it and have to use the technology. And as we all know, governance is basically been rebranded as AI readiness. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to get left behind. We do need to make sure whenever the org is ready, the content and the people and the tech is ready. And that's
Okay.
where orchestra comes in.
Yeah, when we've had Copilot engagements, that's the whole thing where, oh my word, like content is stale, it's out of date. How's it all managed? Because obviously, the CEO wants this and wants to get their tentacles on the whole thing. It's like, oh my word, it doesn't work. Well, hang on, the content doesn't work particularly well.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Okay, so very quickly, what you're talking about is obviously about governance and Copilot. So, what's your viewpoint of the Copilot adoption? Are you seeing people talking about it, or deploying it, or ignoring it?
All of the above. Some organizations just know it's not the right time for them, and you have to respect that.
Why do you think that?
Some of us in the world, I'm going to say probably use us for all of these things because I think we can all relate at one point or another. But some of us want to be on the cutting edge of technology. Some of us want to let other people bleed a little bit, then we'll step in, right? And then sometimes, heck, we'll be on that bleeding edge. And I think our more traditional industries have an interest, but they want to watch and see how it shakes out first, work out the bugs. It's like you never buy the first model year of any car, right? Give it a year, let it sort, let it settle. And I feel like the more kind of cautious industries and organizations, let's let it mature a little bit. Let's let it get brown on top, and then we'll come in, hopefully. And this is one of the things we'll talk about today. While they're waiting for the time to be right for them and for their organization, they're doing the important work so that they know their content and their people are also ready.
Okay. Now, with Copilot deployment, you see a lot of statistics out there in terms of productivity wins. A lot of the statistics are somewhat questionable, but would you still say, wow, these are actually game changers?
Okay, so I'm going to put my consultant hat on for a minute. I'm going to say it depends.
Okay.
I think it depends on those use cases and it depends on the industry. At the M365 community conference last year, it was in Orlando, right? Very early days of Copilot being turned loose in organizations. I was talking with a gentleman in line for lunch. He had taken an RFP process that he has to follow many times a year from 5 days to 12 hours.
Okay, that's fantastic. Yeah.
That's a game changer.
Yep.
If we're only scratching the surface to kind of like help us get started and get over the blank page syndrome of a blog article or a report, we may not go, oh, game changer, but that sure is nice. Right? So there's a spectrum of advantages to getting in, even if you're just doing the easy stuff. I'll tell you personally, the end of last year, I took the longest vacation ever that I had ever had. It was like 15 days. I was out of office for 15 days. And I came back in and I used Copilot to help me catch up on Teams messages, chat and channels, and emails. So I was not digging through an inbox for, usually if you're out for a week, you're digging through your inbox for a day. No, a handful of hours, I was caught up, ready to rock and roll.
That's a good game changer. Yes.
Yeah.
I've heard similar stories in terms of RFPs or response or writing big documents or PowerPoint stuff, where basically it's things that take days are taking hours. I do actually see that. So your first version of SharePoint was 2007.
Yeah.
Okay.
Boss.
So you're now a teenager in your skill set on this one. Okay. And I would say, and let's have a quick look at some of the other questions we asked you. Your favorite features are M365 Loop. We enjoy Loop search. So Delve went away, which of course Copilot. We were talking about this last week, actually. At work. Like I felt Delve went away, which I thought was good. Is that because you think perhaps Copilot was kind of like replacing it in its functionality?
I don't think people knew what to do with Delve. I knew what to do with Delve. Man, Monday morning, what was I doing Friday? Go to Delve, look at the network of people around me because it's all the graph, right? The graph knows who I talk with the most, who I share documents with the most, who I collaborate with the most, who I'm chatting with the most. So it would bring to me those things that I already had permission to, right? So it was not going above and beyond permission boundaries. So I would go see what was going on and go, okay, that's right. That's where I was. Oh, that's right. Michael and I are working on this presentation for the webinar next week. I should probably pull that up. It's a great way to kind of make sure I'm in touch with what's going on around me. Yes, Copilot has absolutely absorbed that. Again, it's just the graph. So sorry. I don't mean it that way. It is also actioning on the graph. So it has those same signals and input. But now we have to know how to talk to it a little bit more than we did with Delve.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I go along a bit with that as well on that. So in terms of readiness, okay, when you put your files on a network drive, okay, okay, so that's your first. Where does it all start and stop? Okay, or where do you start? Okay, I'm a 500 employee company, looking at Copilot. Where do I start?
Well, if you've still got files on a network drive, and before I came to Orchestry, I was a consultant for years and years, and before that, a trainer. So I've had these conversations a lot. If you still have files on a network drive, on a G drive, in Box, Dropbox, all the things, all the places, we need to have a conversation, and it cannot just be an IT conversation. We need to talk with the business as well because it's their data.
Yep.
What's relevant? What is living and breathing? What needs to come over into M365? SharePoint, right? SharePoint's the document management piece of Microsoft 365. Well, we don't know. That's a common answer. I'm not sure. We can't delete anything. Okay, I get it. There's rules, there's compliance. So let's maybe draw a line in the sand and say, we're going to bring back everything that's 3 years old or newer, but we'll leave everything where it is. If you need to go back and get it, go get it. And then after a certain point of time, right, maybe we turn off the ability to go get it because we've seen no one's touched it in a year. Maybe something like that. But bringing that content over and organizing it in a flat information architecture, leveraging metadata, leveraging views, not nesting things deeply, because Copilot and search don't play well with deeply nested structures.
Hang on. So you mean folders? Hang on. That sounds like you're being anti-folder here, or you want meta tag.
Here we are having a nice, polite conversation, and you drop the F word.
Well, hang on. I thought Microsoft flipped back and forth on the whole folder thing.
I do not embrace folders in SharePoint. If I get it, we love to nest things. If you're like, look, I've tried, I can't get users to embrace metadata, maybe try again. But don't go deeper than 2 to 3 folders deep, because the deeper you go, that content's not searchable, it's not findable, it's not backupable, it's not copilotable, right? You go so deep and it's just sitting out there, and you have to start using URL dissection to even find the thing. So let's not do that.
Okay. So that basically, because people love the whole nested folder conversation in SharePoint. Okay.
You know a fun fact?
Tom?
Did you know once upon a time, when I used to know the number, but I'm going to say a little bit more than 30 years ago, folders were new?
30 years ago?
Approximately. Maybe it might be closer to 35 now. But once upon a time, folders were a new thing.
No, because hang on a minute, because you had DOS. I remember the days of DOS, and you had high, because before this is Windows 3.1, and you had DOS, you had DOS, and you had high mem, low mem, and then you used to create these folders. It was like backup, or you had auto back.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you had a folder called DOS, which had all of the config.sys file, actually, I believe, and everything in folders. And then File Manager came about, which is like on top of that. So yeah, that was 30 years ago. Yeah, so maybe the folders conversation came about then. So,
but people are, oh, well, SharePoint's new. SharePoint's 22, 23 now.
2000.
at one time, the concept of using a folder was a new concept for people. Now when we have the metadata, use your views, like, oh, it's new. People don't like new things. Once upon a time, everything was new, right? The thing is, how do we make it approachable? How do we make it usable? Well, we need security on those views. No, you don't. If you're trying to secure things differently that's in the same document library, it means you need to organize your content better, right? That's an organization conversation, but it's all new at some point. And there is a way to make that conversation consumable and approachable for the business user.
Yep. Very much so.
Yeah.
That I'll go along with that. Okay. All right. So that's the brief overview of our Copilot readiness. So do you want to dig in a bit deeper here?
Oh, I'd love to. I have slides and everything, my friend.
Okay.
Look at that.
Very nice.
Goodness.
Perfect.
Over here. I love it when a plan comes together. All right. So we're going to be talking about Copilot readiness. We've already gotten through all this stuff, so I'm just going to skip ahead if the button will click. There we go. So some of the things I want to talk about today around Copilot readiness are our expectations and maybe some pitfalls, how we right the curve, because if we fall down, how do we get back up? And then we'll talk through some what I feel are essential pieces of Copilot readiness. How does that sound, Peter?
Perfect. That works. Works very nice.
Love it. Love it.
Okay.
Okay.
Writing the curve. Interesting terminology there, I have to say.
Yeah, I've got graphics, I've got visuals. It's going to be very exciting. So expectations versus pitfalls. This is a conversation I find I have a lot. And I think when it comes to technology in general, we can come to it with certain expectations. Sometimes those are fueled maybe by IT, maybe from various technology marketing departments. But if we just jump in and don't do some groundwork, we stumble into those pitfalls. So we'll talk about that. But what we've heard, now this slide, it's not my prettiest slide ever, but that's okay. These are phrases that I asked some of our partners and consultants, friends of mine that do consulting. What are you hearing from people at your customer organizations about Copilot? We've heard that it's going to be way easier to use than search. Okay. We've heard, oh, it's just going to work. And we know there's not an install disk anymore where we hit install next, right? So we fire up the licenses and it just works. It's going to save me a load of time. It's going to save me so much time. It's going to fix all the problems, right? Almost like you're just going to set it and forget it. Now, I don't know about you, Peter. How many times have you approached a technology project and you've just flipped the switch, walked away, and it just worked perfectly?
Only when I install stuff on my iPhone. Generally, enterprise applications don't really work. That is a little bit of a deployment strategy, a rollout strategy, adoption strategy, and a support strategy.
Right. Okay. Very important. All of those things. Support. Thank you for mentioning support. That is crucial. So if we're thinking about the content of or the context of a launch of Copilot, let's say we just go into work one day, license some people, flip the switch. Oh yeah, a lot of those people are going to be like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. I've watched the demos. I know so-and-so, they have it. They love it. I've used it with Bing. It's just the coolest thing ever. Let's start doing things. Woo! Let me think. It gave me a list of all of the meetings that I have coming up this week. Super cool, right? Fun stuff starts to happen. But then we start to do maybe more complicated or complex things. And it's like, oh, it doesn't do that. For me, my moment was I turned Copilot loose inside of the Orchestry PowerPoint template, and it just used the title slide for every slide. I was like, oh, it doesn't know to use the different slide templates that are in here. Okay, well, that's a bummer. Now things start to go wrong. Oh, it doesn't do this. I can't get it to condense this 700-page PDF for me, or I've got these things, it's just not doing, it's not working well. Oh, why did Joy in IT see the spreadsheet that has the super secret barbecue sauce recipe in it? Oops. And we get stuck. Maybe it keeps returning bad data. It's seeing out of date information in old reports or presentations, surfacing too much information to the wrong people. We start seeing problems because all we did was turn it on. And we get to this is what we call the trough of disillusionment, kind of borrowing this from the Gartner hype curve.
Okay.
Right? And we could go back and look at that. We could match it up to SharePoint, right? We could match it up to a variety of different types of things. But for any technology, we can end up in that trough of disillusionment because we didn't do the readiness we needed to. We didn't make sure things were right. Like you said, you need to have a way for people to reach out when they need help if something doesn't work right. They need to know what to expect. They need to be prepped and prepared. We've got to do the governance work. If we don't, then we're going to see bad responses because, I don't know, what do you think, Peter? For most of your customers, how much of the data that they have in SharePoint is 100% accurate and up to date?
Probably 0%, actually, I would say.
See, because we never archive things or we don't do cleanup activities.
Well, that goes back to this age-old conversation, is that people with SharePoint, you need like a librarian.
Yes.
Or someone who has that role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's
to go
kind of
back
like
and say,
this is archived, this is wrong. You know, that's what the librarian does. Remember, the librarian at school, they'll put the books back, they'll update the books, they'll recategorize the books. You know, that was their job. They would, if there was books missing, they'll call up the student and say, where are the books?
Yep. Where's the content? Where's the data? Is this still accurate? Totally. Well, if we never do that inside of SharePoint, then the graph, which is search, Copilot, it doesn't have a way of knowing, oh, you didn't mean this report that's 5 years old. Why not? Or if we've never gone through and cleaned up permissions, made sure that they're accurate, the graph is only going to return to you results from content that you have permission to in a site, in a team, in OneDrive, through sharing links. But if that permission is wrong because we have these deeply nested folder structures where maybe the permission was never exactly right, but it was so hard to find, you know, the old security by obscurity, that it used to not matter so much. Now it does. It does matter. And if we keep seeing consistently, oh, this is looking at all this old out-of-date garbage, or how many times did we hear, oh, SharePoint search sucks because it keeps bringing me back this old out-of-date information. It's not the system's fault. It's our fault for not cleaning it up, but we get over it. We're just so tired of it. Why even bother? If I've got to go through 5 pages of bad search results to get to something decent, I'm just over it. I'm going to ask somebody where the document is, right?
Yep.
And if you remember, we were talking about Delve. When they flipped Delve on, I call it the Delve debacle of 2014. Organizations lost their minds because all of a sudden Bob saw things that only his boss should be seeing. Delve didn't give him permission to it. The permission was already there. It just surfaced that the permission was wrong. And we can get into that kind of oversharing situation using search and Copilot.
True. That was one problem with SharePoint in general when SharePoint search came on. Oh yeah, you can search anything.
Oh yeah. 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 If you have permission to it, whether you should or not, SharePoint can't know. Oh, are you sure Joy should have access to this? Maybe one day we'll have Copilot agents that will go, I'm not sure that somebody in, I don't know, operations should be seeing the contracts in facilities. I don't know. That's probably a bad example. Operations facilities might go together, but you know where I'm going.
Yes.
So how do we fix it? How do we fix it? Well, we take a moment. Take a moment and we think about the areas of readiness that need to be addressed for something like Copilot to be successful. And to me, there's three primary areas here. There's going to be content readiness, so our permissions, our security, our architecture. Technical readiness, do we have our licensing in place? Is the environment configured correctly? And human readiness, which I go back and forth between human and content readiness being the two most important ones because they're kind of the trickiest. We're going to spend most of our time in this little bit of a presentation focusing on human and content, but I do have a few things to say about technical readiness. But when we did a survey at Orchestrate about what was the most influential thing, the most critical component of getting Copilot successfully implemented, notice licensing was only 11%. Understanding how to use Copilot, when to use Copilot, and what gets used by Copilot. That's where the majority of people are like, this was critical to the success of the project.
Right.
Yeah. So let's go back to that curve. So when we left off a minute ago, we were in the trough of disillusionment, which is a very, very, very sad place to be. But let's say we've taken a moment, we've gone and we've addressed readiness. Then we'll notice, because technical readiness was done, old stuff's been archived out. And remember, please, archive doesn't mean delete, or doesn't just mean delete. It means we're getting it out of the way. We're putting it to bed. Now the results are going to be accurate. Permissions are correct. So we're not worried about over or under sharing. We've trained people the difference between search and prompting, how to write a good prompt, and kind of the effort that goes into really good prompting. Now the prompts are working because we know how to set the expectation of what we need with Copilot. Now we're getting insightful answers. Now we're saving time. Now that RFP is not taking me 4, 5, 6 days, it's taking me 10 or 12 hours. Now we're really seeing good results. And then Copilot truly can be a co-pilot for us day in and day out, right? So this is our goal. Even if we've gone down the sad path and we've gotten stuck in that trough, we can still go back, communicate with our people, do training, train up our help desk, train up our users, have conversations with the business, work with them, help them, and then we end up back on top, right? And that's where we want to be. So how do we do it, right? That's usually the next question. Sounds great, right? What the heck am I supposed to be doing? All right, let's do the readiness. Technical readiness, I'll touch on it very, very briefly, and then we'll move on to what I think is the more fun stuff. But just a little checklist for anyone that wants it here. Looking at the licensing, looking at dependencies, just seeing what all we need to do in the environment. We'll absolutely give a shout out. There is a great article on learn.microsoft.com, and there's a link to it here since we're not in PowerPoint Live. Can I copy the link from here?
Yeah, put it in the chat.
I'll get that over here and put it in the chat. To the chat, learn.microsoft.com. Great article. It takes just a few things I've put as the bullets here on this slide and really expands it out. Definitely, definitely, definitely worth a read or 3. There's a lot of information there for you. Another thing that Microsoft has done a really good favor for us is they've put together the optimization assessment. We ran it at Orchestrate. You can go through and run it. It took us about 30 minutes to go through. It's not super complicated or complex, but it'll run this assessment and give you kind of a readiness score. So I definitely recommend taking a little bit of time if you are very serious about getting ready for Copilot to go run through and do this. Peter, any thoughts on like the technical aspects of Copilot before I jump into human readiness?
Licensing. Okay, when you're thinking about technical, I'm just trying to think. Once you've got Copilot, you obviously, yeah, if you're using M365, you've always got all the latest versions already, which means Copilot's going to work. There's none of this. You got the wrong. You need to upgrade your SQL Server here. That's that there. You've got it on your phone. One thing which I find with Copilot with the interface, there's two icons. One says search your initial content in your M360 in your company, and then the other one is with the World Wide Web.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of people, when they think of Copilot, they think, well, it's purely company related. Okay, for content, and they don't realize, well, wait a minute, that's actually not actually true. You can be using it as if you're using it for ChatGPT.
Which is powerful.
Okay, so that's that there. So one of the things which we've done at work, we blocked ChatGPT for the simple reason that because some of the junior developers were putting their source code in ChatGPT. So we said, okay, use Copilot and then use that use that. So therefore, it's in our Soho tenant and our Soho environment rather than something else.
Yeah, and that's a good call out too. If you're going to turn off access to tools, turn off access to some tools, make sure you're turning on replacements that are within the security of your tenant.
Well, that's true. But also with tools, if you block it, you've got to provide an alternative. Else people are just going to be emailing it to their Gmail and doing it on their own devices, which is even worse.
Say it ain't so. Shadow IT is morphing into shadow AI. Yeah, that's a good call out.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump into human readiness, which is kind of one of my favorite things. I really am a proponent.
So just go back to the slide. You mentioned about technical stuff. You're right. Yeah. Copilot will not search shared email boxes, I believe. Is that correct?
Oh.
I think that was a previous slide. So it won't search other people's email boxes or shared email boxes. Yes.
Correct.
We actually have had that conversation with clients on that front. And then so that's not supported. And it must be you must be using the new Outlook, not the old one. Yeah, that's probably the technical one. Well, actually, I think the old Teams, the Outlook, I don't think it works. No, does it?
Nope.
Yeah.
No.
So you're already on the new one already.
Okay. Here we go. Transitions, got to speed those up. All right. Human readiness arguably could be the trickier of the three areas because we're talking about changing human behavior and habits. And I don't know about you, but I don't like when people try to change my habits. I don't like it when I try to change my own habits.
Yep.
But it is very, very, very important to set expectations. Let them know what's happening, when it's happening, what's going to change, maybe what's staying the same, just so there's a little bit of a comfort level. Provide training. I was having a conversation with some folks last week about how they feel like training slows things down. Well, there was a competitive shooter back in the 90s. I think it was the 90s, Jerry Mikulek. He had a saying that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So don't go fast. Come in smooth, come in slow, walk, learn how to run. And that is setting up for so much success. And when people start to have success, celebrating, communicating, socializing those successes, huge, because now other parts of the organization can learn from that. And AI absolutely is going to bring with it a new way of working. So new skill sets are going to be needed for that. I hate to read from the slide, but I'm going to. 82% of leaders know they're going to have to help their employees learn how to do AI. True story. In fact, as a consultant, I did training initiatives for my customers because they were having a hard time getting people to learn how to use search at work. Search. You go home and you're going to search for the best barbecue restaurant in Tulsa. We have a lot. Or I'm going to be in Seattle this summer, right? Best park in Seattle. You look for those things with search, but the concept is sitting down at your desk, picking up your keyboard and searching for an HR policy. Why would I do that? I just go click on the link on the homepage, dig through the folders, and there it is.
So
What do you search for?
So we sometimes struggle with getting people to do training, okay, because it's difficult to get scheduling, okay, on that. And the other thing as well, a comment someone said to us, this wasn't a Copilot training. It said, look, I use really complicated tools at home. I use Amazon for e-commerce. I use eBay for e-commerce. I use this thing called Facebook, okay, and I use Google as well. I have required zero training on this, and it's fantastic. Why do I need to spend time on this to be trained? Because I'm using enterprise tools already, and it requires zero training.
Mm-hmm. Is it an enterprise though if it's already been scoped down to you, the consumer, with your single point of entry and guardrails that absolutely prevent you from going back to see what the employees of Amazon see on the back end? I guarantee you employees at Amazon have been trained on how to use the software at Amazon. Google employees, I know, go through hours of training. Is it a big deal if I don't train Joy on the difference between OneDrive and SharePoint? I give her OneDrive where she is allowed to share anything she wants with anyone she wants, because anyone sharing is allowed at OneDrive. And she shares a contract or an invoice or somebody's proprietary information with anyone. Yeah, it is. Probably not a big deal if I share something on my wish list and Amazon with anyone. You know, it's different, and there's higher stakes. Yeah, but it is. I also hear that quite a bit. Oh, I can't take people away from their job for 3 hours. Really? You'd rather not pause them sending and receiving emails or writing a report. We're not going to pause that for half a day, but we're going to turn them loose with AI in an environment where they can go create any kind of content, SharePoint site, Teams. We're going to turn them loose with mission critical content, not train them. That's going to be slow. How many times do we get tickets on the help desk that just permissions are wrong? They can't figure out what they did. They don't remember where anything is. Things aren't working because we didn't invest in training.
Oh, yes.
It's
yes.
Priorities, right? When we're thinking about search, so a friend and colleague of mine, Jay Lease, works at the, they used to be MTCs, Microsoft Technology Centers. They've rebranded. I don't remember what they're called now. He did a workshop with some folks talking about Copilot, and he had one person, he's like, prompts, they're so complicated. I could just do a 1-sentence search and I'm good to go, but with prompts, I mean, we're talking about why should I bother? Well, let's talk about it, because prompting is very different than search. And to get the best prompt, there's some things that have to go together. It's almost like if you want to get the best cookie, you've got to know about bake times and temperatures and ratios. So if I'm going to craft a prompt, my prompt is going to be, hey, dear Copilot. And I don't know about you, Peter, I say please and thank you to Copilot. Do you?
No, I don't.
You're a New Yorker. Yeah, no.
More abrupt.
Knew it. I do. So I'll say, please generate, write 3 to 5 bullet points to set up for a meeting with Soho Dragon to discuss this, right? I'm setting up a scenario for Copilot. When I'm doing this, I'm telling Copilot what the goal is. I'm telling Copilot the context, like why I need it, who's going to be there, because these are all pieces of metadata, basically, that Copilot's going to use to inform what it's going to bring back to me. Where do you need to look? This example, it's emails and Teams chats, and I'm also kind of giving it a time frame. I'm giving it a source, and I'm setting an expectation of how I want that to come back to me. It's very much like a recipe. These are all of the elements that I'm going to give Copilot so it knows who, what, when, where, and why. So an example of a prompt And I absolutely created. Help me to prepare for a meeting. Provide me with a summary of all scheduled activities, attendees, meeting description. And then I gave it instructions on how I want the table to look. And this behind here is an output from this prompt.
Very nice.
This is what helped me catch up from a 2-week vacation very, very quickly.
So when I'm doing the prompting, I often will say something like, you mentioned it was like a brand campaign. It's almost like the brand campaign is quite important. So I try and put an emphasis on that. So therefore that meeting, so it will add in them. And so I was explaining this to somebody where the difference between prompting and search, that prompting comes back with content, new generated content you can use. Search is existing content.
Yep. And like your example, the brand campaign, if you searched for the most recent brand campaign documents, you would absolutely get a list of those documents. And you would click on each one and have to scan it to see, is this the right one? Does this have the information I want? All that good stuff. Whereas if you had a conversation through a prompt with Copilot, it's going to take that data, transform it, and bring it back to you exactly as you said, Peter, in a usable, consumable way. I don't have to open up every document. And I do love, notice here in the back, like the little reference numbers. I can click on that and it'll take me to the source. So it's saying, this is what I used to put this together for you. Just important to check for a variety of reasons, but sometimes Copilot, all AI, I've noticed this is with all AI, wants to please you, wants to be right. It wants to be helpful. So it will sometimes create things that aren't necessarily accurate in an attempt to positively influence you.
Right.
Hallucinations, right?
Yeah.
I had a whole conversation with Copilot about creating a PowerPoint deck. And I gave it information from a variety of sources. And I will say with your prompts, only ask it to do a few things at a time and then build on it through a conversation. It is possible to overwhelm it with asking it to do too many things in the same prompt. I asked it to do this thing and Copilot was like, absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to need a little time to work on that. I was like, no problem. So I came back an hour later. How's it going? Are you able to create this document? Thank you for being patient. I need a little bit more time. No problem. How long do you need? An hour. Okay. We did this all day. Finally, I came back and said, are you able to complete the request and create the document? No, Joy, I'm sorry. I can't do that. I was like, okay, next time, just tell me if you can't do something, right? So Cole is there for a reason.
Yes.
And I will say too, I didn't put decks in here. If you folks are not using Viva Engage communities, now might be a really good time. There's so much good that can come of creating a community to share and socialize. Hey, I used this prompt. It did this thing. It worked so great. That way other people can make use of your wins and other wins in your organization as they come up. So +1 for that. Content readiness. Let's touch on that semi-quickly. Governance has traditionally focused very much on the content side of things, making sure the permissions are correct, that we have the right policies in place, and that our information sources are accurate. So I would say when we're thinking about content readiness in terms of getting ready for Copilot, we want to make sure security is right. Do you have data loss prevention policies, right? Access policies. Are you utilizing sensitivity labels at the container level? These are all important things to do. Do you have to do them all day one? No. But it's a really good thing to start looking into this. So we make sure we have the right kind of control of our data and our data sources. Do user reviews. Do the right people have the right level of access in the right places? and not the wrong places. Like, do we have guests in our teams that should be internal use only, right? Have we overshared with links? And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But just making sure that that kind of stuff lines out correctly. Flatten architecture. We've touched on this a little bit, but again, the flatter the structure, the more benefit you're going to get from Microsoft 365 in general. But this includes better, more accurate search and Copilot results. If you or your organization has teams and they're just working out of the general channel, I would say that might be a good place to start, because if that's a team that's being utilized heavily, that means that files tab in the general channel is probably full of nested folders, which means search, Copilot are going to have issues with that. So those might be good places to look. If you're still using subsites in your SharePoint architecture, recommend raising those up into top-level sites and utilizing hub sites to join them together, where we used to have that traditional top-level and sub-site structure of hub sites. Managing sharing links, oversharing. I've got an example here in just a minute, but if I have a document in my OneDrive and the default sharing link in my organization is anyone in the org, and I share it, guess who at some point, if they click on that link, could have access to that document? Anyone in the organization. And Copilot doesn't register that access the moment that link is created. That token has to be redeemed. It's like, I'm going to go see Killer Queen in concert tonight. I've got my tickets, but the concert hall doesn't know I'm going to be there until I redeem the ticket. Same with that permission and oversharing risk. And then actually looking at our content during content readiness. Is it redundant? Is it obsolete? Is it trivial? I always say the T is trash. Is it trash? Clean it up, get it out of the way, and the content will be more accurate. So for oversharing, I mentioned this, but like people in the organization. So if I share this with all 50 people at Orchestry, as they click the link is when they actually get access to it. So if I run a report to see who all has access today, it's going to be very, very different than who has access to it next week. So that's important to keep in mind. I'm a big fan of not enabling anyone links, because that means I could share it with Peter, and Peter could then go share it with all of his closest friends and family. And eventually over time, as that's redeemed, it could be an issue.
Yes. I always find it's the other way around, actually, where people just lock it all down, and it's like, the tool is called SharePoint for sharing of information.
Share. Well, it's like private channels. We have a recommendation in Orchestry that's part of Copilot Readiness, overuse of private channels, because that means you've locked it away so tight and so hard, people that should have access to it may not, which is another problem for Copilot Readiness. Then this next one is old content. Now the graph does kind of know, hey, this hasn't been touched in 6 years. So for a search result, it won't be up as high in the list of results. But here we asked Copilot, hey, show me the Orchestry logo. And the one it came up with was this old one that's not our logo. In fact, it was from 2020, but it's still floating around there. And it did know that that wasn't the right one. So cleaning up, moving out of SharePoint, which, as you could see from this example, we need to do. And our marketing team, get rid of the old stuff so it's not getting in the way. And then this was a fun example. This is a file that was created in OneDrive announcing a new Queen of the Netherlands. All right, very exciting things.
You've got better things to talk about than the Queen of the Netherlands, haven't you?
Well, this was announcing that Joy Apple was going to be the new Queen of the Netherlands, and that was pretty exciting.
As an American?
Yeah, but I get a crown. Maybe it's a tiara. I don't know. But since it was shared with everyone in the organization, as that link gets clicked, people start inquiring about the Netherlands. A piece of information could surface that Joy Apple is the queen. There's no way of knowing that this was a joke or oops, it shouldn't have been shared with everyone. Joy just meant to send that's Peter as a joke. Now it's considered true. So these are all kind of elements and reflections of things to think about as you're getting ready for Copilot, or even just cleaning up and making search a better experience at your organization. Now, I think I've only got like 2 slides left.
Okay, we're a bit over. That's fine.
Oops, sorry. I'm a talker.
That's right.
That's
good. Good engagement.
Yeah. We have a thing inside of Orchestrate called recommendations that like scans your tenant, lets you know, hey, there's these things you should think about. Well, my goal here wasn't to do like a sales pitch or anything, but I did want to mention a few things that you might just think about for specifically around Copilot readiness, recommendations for getting ready, such as turning off those anyone links, reviewing teams with a high number of private channels, turning on sensitivity labels. There are really good things you can do out of the box, maybe with some scripting, maybe with some PowerShell, Power Automate, to kind of investigate the content, interrogate what you have, look at activity, empty teams, empty sites, get those things cleaned up. That's a good place to start. And then last but not least, for anyone, if you want to connect on the social medias, I am the Joy of SharePoint on X and Blue Sky. And I finally decided to get with the cool kids, spun up a Blue Sky account. QR code goes to my LinkedIn. So yeah,
very cool. Okay, we'll repost all this. Thank you, Joy. This is very interesting and engaging, but always good to see you, always good to talk to you, always very engaging as well. So thank you for your time, and thank you for being a guest on Teams Tuesday. Okay,
my pleasure.
Interesting enough, I don't know, do I need to rename this podcast? Like, choose, because everyone's incorporating Copilot into Teams and everything else. But it's a bit like, in the UK, there's a retail store that sells cell phones, and it used to be called the Car Phone Warehouse. So, is that how it's going? I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay. All right, Joy. Thank you much. I will see you around.
Thanks.
Right.